Welcome to the Mrs. Are Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, sponsored by the Draft Professors. Joined today with Draft Professor Steve, Draft Professor Taylor. We're going to be diving into some linebackers. So if you're sick of watching players run around in their underwear, including some linebackers, we're going to talk about the linebacker class. You might hear some references to the combine, but this is going to be, Taylor, Steve, and I kind of discussing the linebacker boards. But we do need to start the podcast with Sonny Styles has had a really good scouting combine. Taylor, how high can he go?
43.5-inch vertical. I mean, with his tape, his size, his speed, his athleticism, I mean, why not two to the Jets? I'm just saying, like, at this point, I mean, he has had that good of a combine. Like, obviously, David Bailey running a 4.51 makes that a little bit and of an interesting conversation. Ruben Bain, some teams measured his arms 32 inches. I don't know how those measurements work. But I mean, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be a top 5 pick at this point. I mean, we know what the Giants have done at 5 with their edge rushers and their defensive line. And I think that they've talked about having Kayvon Thibodeau maybe traded or something like that. So that's an option, to beef up that front 7 as well. Obviously, they went Abdul Carter last year. So a top 5 pick, I think, is kind of his ceiling, but it doesn't seem unreachable now. Nothing apparently is with how high he jumps.
I like that. And I was saying, how high could he go? And then you took it right into the jump. That was that was a great opening. Steve.
It wasn't exactly a broad leap there, right? Yeah.
So, Sonny Styles. Steve, is he your linebacker 1 as well?
Absolutely. Yep. And, many of you know I'm an Ohio State fan, but there really isn't a bias. I could be sometimes overly critical, but, and I think what the testing does is, sort of affirm certain things for me. It's not everything. Obviously, the tape is, 90% more important for certain positions. I do want to see the athleticism and I pay attention to Raz, but yeah, it's stuff like this, when it comes out, the 43, the 11.9 broad, it just makes me feel a little better,
Okay. And then Steve, your linebacker 2 is who?
Yeah, CJ Allen of Georgia. Just, talk about a ceiling. I was saying in our Draft Professor chat that I wouldn't be surprised, hypothetically, if my New York Jets go with, let's say, David Bailey or Arvell Reese at number 2, I think they would consider him at 16. I think just the type of player he is, we've seen it put out in the universe in the last 24 hours or so, how dependent the staff was at Georgia on him running the show, the leadership, what he's, just able to do against the run in that SEC. He's 21 years old, 3-year starter. He's not particularly the best in terms of coverage. And I think that's, a kind of a consistent theme we see in some of these linebackers this class. But he's a solid 2 without a shadow of a doubt for me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, he's my number 2. I don't think it's as solid for me. Obviously, we're still getting back numbers from the combine, and that will ultimately change my final rankings. But I have him and Jacob Rodriguez 2 and 3, and they're almost identically graded. For me, they're both explosive, or they're both decisive linebackers that are going to impact teams immediately from the inside, right? And you don't see a lot of those. I mean, we saw it last year with Carson Schlesinger. I think a lot of people had him top 50. Nobody expected him to go early in like the first pick of the second round, right? He went before Quinshon Judkins, and they had like two picks and 4 picks or something like that. In Cleveland, and I think CJ Allen and Jacob Rodriguez are both guys that are going to come in and they're going to start immediately. And I think the value for that is going up and up. And I just see both of them as top 40 picks. I mean, CJ Allen is great from a commanding the defense, standpoint. He's one of the smartest linebackers in this class, but I put Jacob Rodriguez right in that category too, right? Like they're both going to come in day one. And that doesn't necessarily mean their ceiling is as high as a guy like Sonny Styles or down the board like Anthony Hill, or everyone's talking about Eric Gentry, right? Being 6'6". CJ Allen and Jacob Rodriguez, to me, are the two most plug-and-play linebackers in this class. I think they're day one starters, instant impact on defense, leaders. Like, these are two guys that I've graded very similarly. They should both go top 40, and it wouldn't shock me if both of them went in the first round.
So, Taylor, I have a question about grading, because if CJ Allen and Jacob Rodriguez are close to each other on your board, like you indicated, well, one of those players is a better athlete than the other, right? So Jacob Rodriguez, from an athletic standpoint, would be probably not the athlete that CJ Allen is. So
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that.
You don't
and
agree?
I'm saying this because I'm getting in live numbers from the combine, but Jacob Rodriguez just had a 38.5-inch vertical. So, like, he was one of the top 5 fastest players at the Senior Bowl. Like, this whole, I mean, it's not you, Jim, it's the whole community. This whole idea that Jacob Rodriguez is not athletic is just so far off base. I don't know where this is coming from. He has some of the best linebacker tape I've ever watched. And he's athletic. He's athletic. I mean, he's showing it. I mean, he's fast. He's explosive. He can jump. Obviously, we'll see what he does in the 40. But I mean, you saw it at the Senior Bowl. I mean, he's one of the 5 fastest players there in terms of miles per hour, and that's tracking how fast you're moving on the field. So even if he doesn't run that well today, I mean, we've seen it on the field. That's running backs, wide receivers, everybody's included in that, and he's one of the 5 fastest. I think that he is as athletic, if not more, than a guy like CJ Allen. He is not Sonny Styles. Like, we're talking about Sonny Styles being like, I mean, he might have a 10-0 RAS, right? He has crazy numbers. But Jacob Rodriguez is no slouch when it comes to athleticism. I think that's something that he gets dinged on because it's just a talking point. I think at this point, if you watch the tape, you see him, he's decisive, he's instinctive, and that makes you play faster. When you put up the numbers that he has put up in terms of the mile per hour reach, things like that, he's already put up a 38.5-inch vertical. I think he gets dinged on his athleticism for not a great reason. I don't think he's the best in coverage, kind of like CJ Allen, and I think that's where people get that from. But in terms of athleticism, I mean, I think he's way more athletic than people give him credit for.
And Steve, who is your linebacker 3?
So I'm very close, but that's the only spot where Shaw and I differ. I have Anthony Hill and number 3, whereas he has J-Rod. But I do want to defend the point that he made. I mean, when you look statistically, through numbers, I mean, J-Rod is one of the only linebackers, I just had it, with over 300 snaps, who is in like the 100th percentile as an overall in his run defense and his coverage. I think both he and Allen really excel at their range, sideline to sideline. So whereas I am higher on Hill, it's like a notch where I have J-Rod.
Yeah, I get it. Anthony Hill is my 4th ranked linebacker, so I'm right there, and like they're all within a half a point of each other in my rankings. So when I said Jacob Rodriguez was right there with CJ Allen, well, Anthony Hill is not far behind him, but this is a totally different evaluation, right? Anthony Hill, I mean, he is a huge, big body guy, play the will, a little bit different than Jacob Rodriguez, who's going to come in, lead, command your defense, and you kind of have to value those things. One is more of an upside play, size, speed, athleticism. You see flashes on tape. You want the most consistent tape pretty much that you're going to get from a linebacker. Definitely in this class, in my opinion, are either Jacob Rodriguez or CJ Allen, right? Those are my 2, and then Sonny Styles. But those are all guys that are going to make impacts, and they all, I think, will go inside the top 40 because of whether it's the rare blend of athleticism, production, and upside you get from Styles and Hill, or just the mentality, the instincts, and the physicality that you get from CJ Allen and Jacob Rodriguez, even though they're a little bit undersized. We've just seen the league trending towards more run. I think people have been talking. I've seen some stuff circulating about, like, I saw a player comment or something about how the league's turning more passing. It's not. It hasn't been for the last couple of years. That was a big trend. It's about 2 years. We're about 2 years into turning into a running league again. And Jacob Rodriguez and CJ Allen are guys that you get as cornerstones of your defense to lead you for the next 4 to 6 years, whatever that looks like. You take those guys top of round 2, end of round 1, and you're solid. You have a solid starting piece that you can build around and just command your defense. So there's 2 different variations in my top 4. They're all really close, other than I have Sonny Styles pretty well ahead of everyone. But I mean, between the upside of Anthony Hill and the consistency of Allen Rodriguez, I think it's a good linebacker class.
Are all 4 of those players in your top 50, Shaw?
I think they will be, yes. And honestly, I'll go a step further. I think they'll all be in my top 40.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Steve, for you, all 4 of them in your top 40 or 50?
They're in my top 50. I have J-Rod outside my 40. He's in my 50, but not in my 40.
Got it. Okay. Linebacker 5. Steve, who's your linebacker 5?
Once again, we get back to being aligned, but I've got Josiah Trotter of Missouri. We know the name. We've been watching his family members for quite some time. He is outside my 50. That I'll be up front. Just instinctive linebacker, another guy who has great sideline to sideline range, very physical as a tackler. He's reliable as a tackler. Another guy, as we've talked about already, that has room to grow in terms of coverage ability. A knock on him might be that quarterbacks did have a pretty high completion rate against him. And he doesn't have the snap count of some of these other guys, but I just see, I think there's a good ceiling, but I'm more comfortable with his floor. And that's why I've got him, as my number 5. Shaw, what about you? Think you're on mute.
Yeah.
Shaw, you're on mute.
You're muted.
My fault. I think that Trotter is just, I mean, the family genes are there. I mean, his brother's in the NFL. He knows what it takes. He knows, I mean, you couldn't have hit it on the head anymore. I don't think, Steve. His floor is unbelievably high. Like, he has one of the higher floors in this class. I don't think I'll have him in the top 50, although now that I'm looking at it, he's actually graded pretty close to Anthony Hill for me, a little bit higher than I thought. I actually have, this is a really random fact, but since we covered safeties on this channel, I'll drop it. I have 6 linebackers graded higher than my 3rd highest graded safety. And that includes Jake Golday from Cincinnati as well. And I think the reason for that is because we're switching, like the league is switching to that more of a run heavy style. And I think just at the top, I just think, like, besides Caleb Downs, right? Caleb Downs is probably on the same level as Sonny Styles in terms of top 5 prospects in this class. But I think there could be as many linebackers besides Sonny Styles and safeties taken. I think if you compare between, Caleb Downs and Sonny Styles are both getting taken in the first round, probably top 10. I think more linebackers will get drafted in the first 40 picks than safeties. And I think the reason for that is because we're seeing the shift. You need linebackers that can stop the run. We just talked about that with some inside guys, also some versatile guys on the outside. It's just the linebacker class is deep. It's fun. And Josiah Trotter for me is just another one of those guys that fits into that CJ Allen, Jacob Rodriguez, come in, start right away. And teams are valuing that more and more. And I think it's going to be a trend that continues. Inside linebacker hasn't really been a position of focus for teams over the last decade or 2 decades. But if you look at last year and you look at the year before, the linebackers in the second round, day 2 linebackers are becoming more prevalent. And I think we're going to see a lot of them this year.
And I'm glad you bring up about the statistics. Yeah, I saw it about a week or so ago. How many more teams are not only over 50% running again, but over 55%. And, if you look at some of the statistics, you're starting to see more NFL defenses play more out of their base than, the 4-2-5s or what we were seeing for the last few years. Everything is cyclical, I guess, including the game of football.
Okay. So you've each covered your top 5s the same. Both of you have Trotter at 5.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So Steve, who's linebacker 6 for you?
Yeah. Jake Golday of Cincinnati. I'll be honest, I haven't seen much of the combine, so the measurements, I'll take everybody else's word for it. But, despite the competition that he faced there, he's a guy with, what I would call the prototypical size for the position. Great work ethic, 0-star recruit, came as an edge, right, from Central Arkansas. I mean, he's fast as hell, right? Over 22 miles an hour. But overall, a 3-year starter. I did say 2 years at Cincy. I think he's better at coverage than some of the other guys that we've already, discussed. And yeah, there may be, you could say, a lower level of competition over the last couple of years being at Cincy. I don't put a lot of stock in that. He is older. He's a 5th-year guy. And I think he's still developing some of his pass rush moves, but I just really like him, for his coverage ability and what he brings to the table. He is in my top 70. So just outside of a 2nd-round grade.
Yeah. He's my favorite pick to the Indianapolis Colts in round 2.
Well, we'll see if his RAS holds up.
And that's
all
it,
they
right?
care about over there.
He's expected to have a high RAS score, which the Colts love. Taylor.
So they're pretty much middle, right? Because the Jets have their first at 16.
Yeah.
So they're probably around like 48, 50,
40,
something like that. Okay. Yeah.
Taylor, who's your linebacker 6?
Same, Jake Galday. I think I have just a couple more quick hitters on Galday before we move to the next linebacker. But 3 years at Central Arkansas, had no issues transferring up to Cincy. Couple things. PFF, his run grade improved every single year, even coming from Central Arkansas up to Cincinnati, and his missed tackle rate decreased every single year. So 2 things that you're looking for when you're evaluating players are size, speed, obviously athleticism, and then how do they get better over time, right? Like I think they talked about it. R. Mason Thomas came to Oklahoma at like 208 pounds or 220 pounds, whatever it was, like no weight. And he's put on weight over the course of time, and things like that and improve. That's something that I think Jake Galday did really well. I think his coverage is a strong suit, kind of like Steve mentioned. He's very lanky, super versatile. He can line up on the edge. He can blitz from, the A gap. He can cover in the back end if he needs to. He kind of has I would say what I wrote in my notes is that he has a uniquely diverse play style in that he can do all these different things. My comparison for him is Zach Bond, but like a light version of that. Like Zach Bond played edge for a long time, obviously famously switched, became one of the best defensive inside linebackers on that Eagles Super Bowl team 2 years ago. But Jake Galday to me is that same type of, he has that height, weight, speed, kind of athleticism build that maybe means more for like rushing off the edge or playing that will, but man, move him anywhere. And he's just, he's a super athletic piece to get in your front 7.
Well, and something to add on Galday. So you're talking about moving him to edge. Cincinnati played him in the slot.
Yeah.
Right. So this is like Galday. I think part of the challenge is we'll say there's a position transition because Taylor's talking about maybe he plays edge or will, but he has a lot of snaps in college at the slot. I believe in 2024, he was entirely a slot defender covering wide receivers on pass routes.
Yeah, that to me is a little bit more.
36% of all of his snaps, so more than a third in the slot.
Yeah, and I don't really agree with the assessment of the way that PFF determines that because this is clearly a linebacker playing linebacker, but because college, the hashes are wide, it looks like he's in the slot because of how far out, but he is playing linebacker. Like he is playing will linebacker. He's not a slot defender. He won't be a slot defender in the NFL. He is going to be a linebacker. So that's the thing that I have a little bit of a gripe with like PFF, right? Is like they list him as, he's in the slot. Well, yeah, because he's guarding the tight end that's, 20 yards wide because he can be, right? In the NFL, that everything condenses so much. The field condenses down. He won't be playing in the slot in the NFL, but he is a very athletic linebacker, and he covers extremely well for a linebacker. I don't think you put him in a slot man-to-man on any wide receivers. He's not holding up in that situation, not in the NFL. But he's a good linebacker, and he's going to play at that position in the NFL.
Okay, Taylor, who is the next linebacker on your board?
That'll be Deontay Lawson, linebacker out of Alabama. So another inside guy. I don't have measurements in front of me. I haven't really been watching too much. But I just see that Sonny Styles is the the highest vertical of anybody 6'4" or over in combine history. I got the combine on next to me, but Deontay Lawson, Alabama, inside linebacker. I think his instincts are really, really good. He's a physical linebacker, had really good film. Not a player to me that has tremendous upside, but more upside than like a Jacob Rodriguez, if that makes sense. But his film wasn't quite as good. So he's a little bit lower for me. But yeah, another player that's probably a day 2 guy, back end of day 2. I would say, take him in the third round, and you're going to be pretty happy with the result of that pick. So I'm a fan of Deontay Lawson out of Bama. Do you have anything more on him, Steve?
Yeah. So, I think part of it is he did come back from the ACL, right? And, and he played, he played pretty much the whole season. I think a story with Lawson is there isn't necessarily anything, he's got good change of direction, right? He's a good run defender. I think when I'm looking at Lawson, and you and I are the same, he's my 7th guy as well, is there isn't necessarily anything elite about him, but also nothing disqualifying, right? So, as we talked about before with a ceiling, he may be more the conversation that we're having about a floor, right? He is going to be an NFL starter. And, it's his experience, his football IQ, the leadership, look where he played. And, he's consistent. He's not, Sonny Styles with a 200-inch broad jump or whatever it was. I'm obviously exaggerating. He may never be an all-pro, but he's going to give you above average play across all the phases for a very long career. So that's the only ad I have on that.
Okay. And Steve, who's your next linebacker?
So this one is where things started getting, where I'm starting like, man, am I sure about this? Where I start really, where I go back and watch. But, and maybe I get a little caught up in size, and maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. But my next guy is Tareen York of TAMU. 5'10", we think. I haven't seen any of the measurements. Good production. Last year he's a team captain and a leader, physical. He's got really good reaction and speed. I think the big knock on him, if there's one thing, is going to be the size. He's got great tape, and a really good story, right? 3-star recruit coming out of high school. Any other notes I have? He wasn't offered a scholarship until just before signing day, and it's paid off for him. But it's how is he going to be able to cover some of these tight ends and some of these receivers as 5'10"? I mean, maybe he could cover Mekhi Lemon if Mekhi Lemon was 5'9", or but I'm not 100% there. I think I have some conviction as the next one on my board, but I'm curious to hear what you think and your number 8.
Yeah, so he wasn't a player that I fully evaluated, but I thought his tape was good. I looked at his tape. I haven't got his full evaluation in there yet, so he's not technically ranked for me, but he has good upside. I just think the size is a bit of a concern, like you said. But man, the film is good. The play speed is good. I mean, he looks good on tape. He looks the part. I think the measurables for me are going to be pretty big for him, and like what he looks like to finalize my evaluation. But he's an interesting study because again, he's another inside linebacker that teams are going to value because he's a quality player right now.
Yep, and I think the point to make on Tareen York that would be different than the players you guys have ranked ahead of him, and Sam Teets has been pointing this out in the Draft Professor group chat and on Twitter today, is that York would be a historical outlier based upon height. So my draft prognosis is you start looking at that at the top of round 5, right? So the film might grade better than round 5, but an NFL GM that I think Tareen York is going to be a team's favorite round 5 pick. Like whatever team grabs him in round 5, they're gonna love the pick, right? Yeah. Now his film is probably good enough, like you guys said, to go earlier, but being a historical outlier could push him a little bit further into day 3. But Taylor, who's the next linebacker on your board?
Yeah, so for me, and I'm gonna mess up his last name, but the Oregon linebacker, Bryce Betcher. Bryce Betcher. Okay, Bryce Betcher is my linebacker 8 right now. He is a guy that just had, such good production. The next two guys on my list are, and again, maybe this is something that I like. Obviously, I talked about Jacob Rodriguez in this fact, but Bryce Betcher is just so productive. He graded really high in my production score. And then his film, right? He's not as high of graded his film on some of these other guys. Like, he's a little reckless. He runs in there extremely hard, extremely sometimes just out of position by trying to get into position too fast. Does that make sense? Basically, if you're coming downhill as a linebacker, you have gap responsibilities, right? Sometimes as a former safety, he just kind of blows in there hoping for the best. And I think that's kind of what knocks him down a tier from someone like Josiah Trotter or Jacob Rodriguez, right? Where these guys are pretty disciplined in their gaps. They're pretty consistent. They have really, really high floors. Betcher's an interesting study, man. I mean, he just loves football. Baseball guy, obviously was drafted by the Astros last year. Turned down baseball. They're cool with him going to pursue football because that's what he loves to do. And I mean, he's a linebacker that plays like he loves football. So that grades well for me, and just the athleticism he has as a former safety, I think that helps as well, especially in pass coverage. I think he's a little bit better in pass coverage than people give him credit for within the community. So good linebacker, another solid player for me. That's a day one starter and definitely a contributor on special teams.
Steve, who's your next linebacker?
So again, when I brought up York, I have 3 guys that I still need to sort through. So I'm just giving, if we did this show next week as I'm trying to get out, the final board, it may change a little bit. Next guy on my list is Caleb Elamzor of TCU. Box dominant alignment. Didn't see the measurables, but anyway.
Can I tell you?
Oh, it's freakish. Like it's in the draft professor.
He ran a 4.47 and jumped 40 inches. I didn't rank him for this. I didn't get to him for this. And I just was like, looked over and I have the combine tracker up on this thing. And I saw 40 because you see Sonny Styles 43.5. The next guy on the list is 40 from Caleb Elamzor. I updated it to go for the 40-yard dash. What do you know? 4.47.
Well, and you want to hear something? One of the early notes I have, we did on the show here, we've covered TCU a couple of times during the season for this. And I went back to early notes that I had from one of our other shows where we were doing the game previews. And I have in my chicken scratch, questionable, how good of an athlete is he? And will he be able to have good straight line speed? There goes that right out the window.
There you go.
And so this is Caleb Elamzor, linebacker from TCU. So it's interesting that you guys bring him up, and I think at this point we're right around linebacker 10 or 11.
I think 8 or 9.
9.
Okay, we're still in the top 10. So the reason I want to point that out is with all the different guests that are coming on Draft Professor and doing mock drafts, he needs to get more buzz, right? Because people are now saying, okay, that's my round 4 linebacker, right? So they're doing a mock and they're saying, I need a linebacker, show me the board. And as soon as they see that Elamzor is there in round 4, he's like, yeah, that's my guy.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I haven't went and studied the tape, but my goodness, the speed and the explosiveness jumps off the combine, clearly.
Yeah, but just some things I had on him. I mentioned the early notes, but just a guy that makes plays all over the field. TCU uses a very pro style multiple front. He's a former edge, positional change to inside linebacker. I mean, it involved, but he was pretty box dominant in terms of his alignment. Positioning, assignment execution, good tackling. He does the right thing in the right spot all the time. And gets there in the right way. So I forget what number. I think number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's my number 9. Who do you have, Cha?
Yeah, number 9. And I should have went before you on this one because Bryce Betcher and Aiden Fisher is my linebacker 9. They are 0.01 separated right now. Obviously, RAS will be the last thing I add into this model, but this is on film, their awards, their upside, and then their production grade. And they are 0.01 apart. And I mean, I just can't think of two football players in this class from a linebacker perspective that are just so similar. And it makes perfect sense why they're right next to each other in my model, right? Like Aiden Fisher is just a old school, like linebacker, like middle linebacker. He's going to come up. He's going to hit you. He's going to be disciplined. He is not going to be someone that can be on the field on a lot of third downs, and that's going to drive down his draft stock, right? Quite a bit. Like he is a 2-down linebacker. Like,
why do you say that? That's interesting you say that, because there's other draft professors that will say that Aiden Fisher is the best pass coverage linebacker in the class.
I don't know if I'd go that far. I don't think he has the athleticism, in my opinion, to be the best pass coverage. Like the best pass coverage linebacker
like Kyle Lewis
in the class is Kyle Lewis, not close. So I guess that's kind of, that's a pretty big disconnect. Maybe from an inside linebacker perspective, I could see that. He's a better coverer than Jacob Rodriguez, or maybe even as good as Jeremiah Trotter, or even better than him, maybe as good as Betcher or Lawson as well. So like those guys are pretty close. So maybe from an inside linebacker perspective, but if you start adding in some of these outside linebackers, that I don't agree with that at all. But I just think Aiden Fisher is like as tough as they come. I mean, he is just, to me, he's like a throwback linebacker that every team is going to be pounding the table for at the top of day 3. It's got to be one of those guys that they're seeing him on top of day 3 and they're like, should we move up from the 20th pick of day 3 and give up a 6th or something to go get this guy? And then he starts for 5, years for that team, and then they let him go or whatever it is. To me, that's what Fisher and Betcher both give you, is just immediate contributors, physical guys, team players that are going to play special teams, and then they're going to be able to develop into full every down linebackers. But I do think, I think Fisher is more suited for an NFL role to be an early down linebacker and contribute in that way in the run game.
So where are you in Aiden Fisher, Steve?
Yeah, well, once again, we're back to being aligned, because what was that, number 9 or 10? I lost count, but I'm right there with him. One of the many guys that followed Signetti from JM to Indiana. He was Indiana's first ever All-America. I think there's good blitz utility with him. And this is where, to the viewers that follow a lot of these stats and things and the analytics, if you just go by some of these ratings, and I won't say who, we all know, it doesn't tell the tale, right? Because the grades that he's given say average, but the production says well above average. His impact exceeds what I think a lot of these grading systems manage to capture. He just makes the play, and the plays that matter, even if the technique may not be 100% at best. I think he's, you're just good old fashioned, probably showing my age, but probably you're just traditional, no frills linebacker. Throw him in the middle of there. He's physical. He's sound. He's reliable. He's not going to wow you on any one particular snap, but he just does his job consistently, snap, snap, snap. And that consistency was there at well over 2,300 snaps.
Okay. And then, Steve, who's your next linebacker?
Yep. So next on the list, at some point, I'm looking forward to us having really different things. Well, you're much higher on. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I heard you say it, but I'm not even going to try. Next for me would be Buffalo, Red Murdoch. Off ball, used a lot in the box. Absolute monster on a football field. I mentioned before a second ago about, old school throwback linebacker, playing in a leather helmet. Great size, good instincts, a real thumper, good, if not great, force fumble production. I don't do comps. I've told you this. I look at him as sort of a Josie Jewell, right? And I think there's a range there. physical, instinctive, the processing, his toughness, it compensates for maybe what his body won't let him do and why he may not go earlier. Do I think he's a 3-down linebacker in a pass heavy, and passing heavy NFL defense? No, but I'll take that dude to play the run and come down and just smoke somebody. Taylor, where are you on Murdoch, and who's your guy?
Murdoch is someone that I haven't fully finished my evaluation on, but I mean, if you just look at his run defense, I mean, he's second to maybe, I mean, at least in terms of like some of the analytics and stuff out there, he's right behind Jacob Rodriguez as one of the best run defenders in this class. So I agree that he's going to be someone that's more suited for early down success in special teams. That doesn't mean he can't go at the top of day 3, right? Like, I think he's a really good player. So I'm excited to finish up his tape. I know I graded his film, and I think his coverage is probably one of the lower end ones of anyone in this class. So I think that's going to hold him back a little bit, kind of like I mentioned, from being on the field on a lot of these third downs. Now we get into, these are 4 players that I'm not going to list all 4 of them right now in order, but like the next 4 guys are just so compelling to me as just someone that watches football, because I don't know what to do with any of them. And the first one is Kyle Lewis. He's my 10th ranked linebacker. I mean, just really good in coverage, really instinctual, so smart, explosive, just a really, really quality linebacker that's going to be all over the field, all over the place, and make really, really good decisions. Really undersized, right? Like, we're talking about kind of in the Torian York like camp of where it's like an outlier. And we talked about it in the chat a little bit, not wanting to draft a lot of outliers, but you also want to draft good football players. And I think that's where Kyle Lewis separates himself from the outlier, because whether or not you think he's going to be a starting linebacker in the league, I'll tell you one thing, he's going to be a hell of a special teamer. Like, he's going to play special teams, and he's going to be awesome at it. He's going to be able to come in situational packages, help out, maybe in a little bit of a more pass heavy package, whatever that looks like, whether he can come off the edge. And that's something he talked about in his interviews yesterday. He talked about how versatile that he wants to be, right? He can move all over the field and do all sorts of different things. But he does ultimately see himself playing linebacker in the NFL, and I do as well. And I have him as a top 10 linebacker in the class.
So, Steve, is Kyle Lewis on your linebacker board?
Yeah, I just I don't know where to put him. That was one of the challenges, but just to piggyback, he's a space defender, right? And he could be all over. He's quick. He's, dangerous in coverage. He could chase you down. But I think he's more of a matchup guy than a traditional linebacker. I had asked, I think it was to you, Jim, a while back, because on a Twitter show that I do on the weekends, I had a Pittsburgh beat guy that covers the school as well as the Steelers. And we got into a conversation, about the Pitt linebackers. Obviously, the other one is still in school, and he moved over to Texas, I believe. And we were talking where we see him, and we both are like in that hybrid role without really a title, something of a nickel, something of a safety, something of a linebacker. But I think for him, it's more about him as a matchup than as a consistent linebacker, right?
Well, and I want to repeat some things that were said in the podcast last night, and Kyle Lewis kind of fits into this. So, an NFL team is probably going to have 4 defensive backs on the field. They will probably have 2 linebackers on the field, and they will probably have 3 defensive linemen on the field. But then what you need are some chess pieces. Maybe you need a linebacker that can play strong safety, for example. That's Kyle Lewis, right? He could be your 3rd linebacker in certain sets. He could be your 5th defensive back in other sets, and you don't have to sub him out of the game. So you need to look like the NFL defenses are going to be looking for players like this. Now, ironically, a lot of them are going to come from Oklahoma. Like Billy Bowman last year would be a great example of a player like this, because he was listed as a safety, but I believe Atlanta used him as a linebacker, right? So he's a small linebacker, but you can use him as a 3rd linebacker movement of the box. I think Kyle Lewis is going to be something similar. Think of
Well,
him.
and haven't we talked a lot about another guy like Jalen Kilgore, right?
Correct.
That's another one where you're gonna, it's gonna be like the shell game. Where are we gonna put him?
Yep. And I think, Taylor, you did that podcast with EJ many weeks ago where we covered Kilgore and Kyle Lewis in the same podcast. They played different positions in college, but it's that slot defender that they're probably both going to play at the NFL level. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing that separates Lewis is his not only his athleticism. Like, I mean, he just ran the fourth highest vertical. He had the second longest broad jump, and he had the fourth fastest 40-yard dash. So you're looking at one of the 3 or 4 most athletic linebackers in this entire class. So yeah, you're right. To be a chess piece and be able to move around and be able to have the instincts that he has from just watching his film, and I mean, he's got really, really good tape, and he's a player that I think, man, you got to find a way to get him on the field, right? Almost more than you have. Like, he has to tell you where he wants to play, whatever that may be, whether it's linebacker, safety, like you mentioned. But like, you got to have him on the field. You got to have him on the field. I mean, he's just that good from a football player standpoint. Like, I don't think you let him slip past the 4th round, right? If he's in there in the 4th round, another one of those guys you want to look to move up and go get. Especially, again, though, this kind of limits his options, right? Because he's so team specific. He's probably going to be a player that is only targeted by 9 to 12 to 15 teams, right? And I know you could say that for a lot of these players, but when we look at guys like, and this is a little bit different, but like Nick Emanwari from last year, like, he was a scheme fit, right? And he dropped 15 spots from where he should have went, right? I mean, I had him as a top 20 guy. A lot of people had him as a top 20 guy. Right. Safety obviously being devalued, but then you look at the impact he just had on the Super Bowl winning team. Like, those guys are going to become more and more of, like, integral pieces to defenses. And not everyone is Nick Emanwari. I get that, but from a this is what the teams are looking at. So there might be a 10-pick stretch in the middle of the 4th round where these teams don't even have him on their board because they don't know what to do with him, right? So it's going to take a really specific situation, and I'm a little worried that he might slide because of that, but all it takes is one team, and he could go as high as the 3rd round.
So there's a guy I would love to get your input. I'll switch gears with Jim, and I'll be the one asking a question, because while we were just talking a couple of minutes ago, I got a message from somebody who's watching on one of our channels. And it was like, well, why haven't you brought up Kendall Daniels of Oklahoma? And that's another interesting guy, right? I just lost my train of thought. Safety convert, right?
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on him? I mean, I have a grade on him. It's middle day 3. Yeah, probably.
Well, yeah. So and ultimately, when you get into this category of linebackers, you're drafting the athlete, and you need to see what happens. So you're not going to get a starter day 1, but the draft, there's 25 linebackers that get drafted, and on this podcast, we've only covered 12 of those 25 so far, right? There's a lot more linebackers that we can probably get to as we're kind of blitzing through the day 3 guys. But Kendall Daniels is that athlete, like you said, safety converted to linebacker. The NFL is going to love guys like this. Get him in your building. He's going to be a day 1 special teams player. And then we see what happens in year 2, year 3, see if he can crack the starting line.
Yep. Yeah, and Kendall Daniels to me he's so interesting because when you listen to him talk about his college experiences, he spent 4 years at Oklahoma State under Mike Gundy before obviously he was fired, and then he transferred to Oklahoma. Oklahoma State was an absolute mess. Like, Kendall Daniels didn't even begin to, like, he started to mention, like, oh, when I got with Venables in Oklahoma's defense, like, it completely, like the whole sport changed for him. Like, the way he saw the sport, the way he studied the sport, the way he reacted to the plays on the field. And he gave a lot of that credit to Brent Venables. And I think just in that 1 year of growth from 4 really productive years at Oklahoma State to then going to Oklahoma and then making an impact on a really, really good defensive team and using that as saying, oh, well, that was kind of like my intro to, football almost. Like I became a much better player over that 1 year, even more so than I did in my 4 years. It's like, okay, well, what happens when he gets NFL coaching? And I know Brent Venables is one of the best coaches in college football, especially on the defensive side. But I'm saying when he gets with NFL coaches, like what is his ceiling? We don't know. Right. So like that is a high ceiling upside to me. That is someone that I think is going to be a day one special teamer, probably every special teams if you can get him on it, right? He's going to be someone that you rely on in that aspect, and then you probably have him in situational packages, whether it's pass rushing or, he's not as good in coverage, but if you're a linebacker, maybe he's blitzing from the linebacker position. I think that's where he's really good at timing those blitzes up. There's a really, really good play he had where he diagnoses a screen, right? Because he sees the pulling guard. That's kind of the mentality that he got from Venables and what he learned from Venables, right? Like he said in his interview, like he wouldn't have been able to make that play 2 years ago. But because of the tape study, because of the preparation, he was able to make that play. So I think with consistent, this is now their full-time job, right? Now he has all the time in the world to prepare, do all that stuff. Like his ceiling is just untapped, in my opinion, whether that's at safety or linebacker.
Who are you higher on out of there? Are you higher on Daniels or Owen Heineke?
I haven't finished my Heineke grade, but I think I'll be higher on Daniels. But it's so interesting. I've told you this before, Steve, but I grade every single player at whatever position that if they're a hybrid, I grade them at safety and linebacker. I give them a separate grade for both. Kendall Daniels ended up right now, he's my safety 13 in the class. Right now, which I haven't finished this, so take it with a grain of salt, will probably change. He's my linebacker 13. So, he is in that firm, early day.
Yep.
I don't even want to say early day 3.
He's a day 3. Yeah.
Definitely day 3. Day 3, 100%.
At this point, I think I've heard about 100 early day 3 players.
If you look at it from just Betcher, Fisher, Lewis, Daniel, even talk about York, maybe
Harold Perkins. We didn't talk about him out of LSU, but he's another guy.
So, my dark horse, for Kendall Daniels. So, you mentioned Venables. So, Jim Leonard, who is Buffalo's defensive coordinator, came from Denver, as you know, Taylor.
Yep.
He hired, I want to say it was the Oklahoma defensive coordinator to be the Bills D-line coach, but it may have been the Oklahoma D-line, right? But meaning very familiar with Kendall Daniels.
Yeah.
I think Buffalo's drafting a player from Oklahoma. Just got to figure out which one.
Yeah, just which one. Yeah, so many options.
And Oklahoma's defense is stacked because next year's draft is going to be filled with even more Oklahoma players. Yep. So this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, yeah.
But I love the shout out for Owen Heineke. So we were doing the Tuesday podcast with Randall, Jerry Ostrowski, Owen, and I. And Jerry said, have you guys watched Owen Heineke yet? So Jerry he's in Tulsa, so he's very familiar with the players at Oklahoma, right? He does an Oklahoma radio show and stuff like that. So as soon as Jerry tells us to go watch a player, we immediately study it, right? So Heineke is a very draftable linebacker from Oklahoma, very athletic. Oh, yeah. So Steve, I love that shout out of another day 3 player.
Taylor, I will tell you, it's a different conversation than what we had on Daniels, but if I'm looking at more of the purer linebacker traits, I am higher on Heineke. His closing speed is ridiculous. The problem is he's got to learn to rep. As a linebacker, you got to be able to tackle. And he's got a very high missed tackle rate. So that's the problem. I think right now, it's another guy we talked about, special teams, developmental. But, day 3 guy. He's getting drafted.
For me, I'll take Daniels. Just on the upside alone. And honestly, I think from right now, I think I'd take him right now. I to be honest, I'm looking at the live results of the combine, which I know you don't have in front of you, Steve, but he's pretty disappointing today. Owen Heineke was pretty disappointing in terms of athleticism. He ran the second slowest 10-yard split. He had the lowest vertical, the second lowest broad jump, the second slowest 40 time. He was one of the least athletic linebackers today at the combine. And take that with a grain of salt, as you should with these things. But we're talking about his athleticism, and we just heard, and we've seen it on the tape shows it. He looks pretty athletic, but we don't really see that translate to what happened today. The closing speed wasn't elite. His full speed wasn't elite. His explosion wasn't elite at all compared to just this linebacker class. So for me right now, I'll take Kendall Daniels, and I don't necessarily have it that close at this moment, but Owen Heineke will get drafted. It will likely, for me, be in the 6th or 7th round.
So, Taylor, have any more linebackers for the crowd?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I will go with the next two are so fun and interesting to me. I'll go with, Eric Gentry has got to be the talk of the entire combine, right? He measured it at 6'7", 220 pounds. I mean, that's Jason Tatum. Like that is an NBA player playing football, and he does it so unorthodox. I don't know. This is not even a word. Unorthodox. It's unorthodox what he does. Okay. And
I think just unorthodox works. Yeah.
Absolutely crazy watching his tape because he makes so many plays. He punches the ball out better than almost any linebacker in this class, not named Jacob Rodriguez. He is a turnover forcer. He's decent in pass coverage, but that's not his strong suit. I love him rushing the passer. I think at that frame, just bulk up as much as you can and see if you can get on the edge, man. Like he could be an edge rusher. I think in this league, I think it's a long shot for him to have a specific role that suits him. But man, he is someone that is all over the place, impact defender, has been for years. And I have, in terms of upside in this class, him and Sonny Styles have the highest upgrade, which just means I'm talking an all-pro player if everything hits, right? He is a complete unicorn. 6'7", 220, moves really, really well. And I just think he makes plays too. It's like he has some tape that resembles Jacob Rodriguez, who I mentioned has some of the best tape. Like his tackles, like even when he tackles the running back normally, because he's so lanky and his arms are so long, he hits the running back at different angles that they don't normally get hit at, and it causes more fumbles than you would think. Just on film, just a normal wrap-up tackle for him has caused fumbles because of how lanky and how unorthodox his body style is. Just another guy that, man, I mean, you talk about untapped potential. Who knows? He could be a 15 sack guy in the NFL if he switches. If he can play edge, which I think that's where he should play. I think he's good at rushing the passer. He has kind of a unique ability to get around tackles, even as an undersized linebacker. Well, in terms of weight, obviously, and strength, he definitely needs to put on strength. I mean, he looks like a string bean, but I mean, he is. I mean, just. When I see a total unicorn like that, like to me, it's like, well, if he gets in the right system, like a Nick Emmanwori, we already talked about it. If he gets in that system with a coach that believes he can do X, Y, and Z, and that's what they train him to do, and that's what he goes on the field and he executes, I think he has some of the best potential in this entire linebacker class.
Well, and I think Clint, draft professor Clint, let me pay him the respect, hit it on the nose, as far as special teams, right? Get him in on special teams. And then, let him cook. But, man, he's lanky.
Yeah, I think at this point we're in the pod where everybody here, it's a given. We don't even need to say the word special teams anymore. These guys are all playing special teams.
Right.
And I just think that's something that I personally love because I love special teams. Obviously, I love the new kick return rule, stuff like that. But special teams is just a given. Anyone outside the top 10 linebackers, I mean, even the back half of the top 10 right now, year one, year two, they're all playing special teams. Only 53 roster spots. Like
your backup safeties and your backup linebackers have to be like 4 to 6 of your core special teams players. Because some teams, the backup corners won't play special teams. Like Tre'Davious White, when he was a backup corner, never played special teams.
That's probably like a 10-year thing too. He's been around a while.
Yeah. Well, no, and it's just, some corners are going to be more athletic and do that than others. But, you need 11 guys in special teams, and more than likely one of them is going to be your third string running back. 3 of them are going to be your backup linebackers. 2 of them are going to be your backup safeties. And then you still need to find a few more on the roster. But we know those won't be the offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So, backup tight ends, whatever, right? But you need athletes to go down and cover the kicks. So, so we have just a few minutes left. Steve, you just want to rattle off the names of any other linebackers that you may have in your top 20, just to give them some name recognition on the show?
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity, because I do want to bring up a couple of names. I won't dive into it. Maybe I'll do a show on my channel and call it Linebackers Part 2, sponsored by the Draft Professor. But Xavier Sori of Arkansas, Scooby Williams, Texas A&M. But I haven't watched a lot. Well, he's more of an edge specialist. Okay, I'll hold off on Jack Kelly of BYU. I do want to give two guys a shout out. They're probably very late day 3. They might even wind up being priority or undrafted free agents. Because as I was assembling different things and I look at different things, here's a name I'm going to throw out, and he's a will. Braden Johnson of Wyoming. Now, I know most people don't identify with Wyoming because, they had a bad experience reportedly. There was a quarterback that came out of there 2018 who struck out in the league. He was one of the worst draft picks of all time. But
I thought you were going to bring up Chad Muma for a second.
I've got some comps on him, but Braden Johnson.
John Elway's biggest draft mistake.
Yeah.
John Elway's biggest draft mistake was a quarterback from Wyoming.
I'm going to push back on that because we drafted Bradley Chubb, who then we flipped for a first, and then we traded that first for Sean Payton. Wrong.
Okay.
I'm going to go wrong on that one. But I think if those subsequential events hadn't happened, absolutely. 100%. 100%.
I really didn't mean to start this. I really should just be alive. I did.
You're poking the bear. I'm just saying.
Don't start with me about poking the bear. For our audience, I do have or contribute, at least on the weekends. I have a weekend space show on Twitter. Some of my colleagues usually open up during the week, and we were blessed to have Mr. Wickens join us this morning. And if we're covered in gasoline, he came in with the flamethrower saying that what if the Jets drafted Jermod McCoy with the 2nd overall pick? And then you left. Anyway, I don't want to, we could have laughs about this another time. It was great, though. Anyway, Braden Johnson, Wyoming. And thank you, Brian, for the comment about Jack Kelly. One of the best coverage disruptors in this linebacker class. What else do I have? Not that great a tackler. So there's that. And I do want to give Brian another shout out. For those of you that are on Twitter, Brian is like one of the best there is at the FCS guys. He really puts in a ton of work, and he'll put out names there that I obviously haven't heard of. And at one point, he brought up Bryson Edwards out of Lehigh, more of a coverage linebacker, probably undrafted free agent, but this guy is just insane in any percentile ranking. The entire evaluation is a transition question of how do I get this guy on my football field and what do I do with him? So shout out to you, Brian. Thank you for the heads up.
Is he more, I'm just a question as a Broncos fan. Is he more like Alex Singleton came from D2, right? Is that a D2 Lehigh or is that FCS?
FCS, Patriot League.
Well, okay. So even I guess Alex Singleton came from FCS. So I guess I know what you're talking about a little bit more with the jump, right? So is he that style of linebacker? Is he more able to play off the edge, cover, or is it just like Singleton where he's like downs 1 and 2?
Oh no, he's a coverage linebacker in my opinion. Yeah.
Awesome.
Coverage
linebacker. I'll have to look into him. I'll rattle off my names real quick. Just I only have a couple. The one I want to highlight is inside my top 12 is Brian Parham from Connecticut. He's a little undersized. I think 6'1", 210. Another guy that's going to be a freak on special teams. I gave him one of the highest. He has one of the highest production grades in my entire model. He actually tied Jacob Rodriguez with production on the field. He had 10.5 sacks and 104 tackles. He is an absolute beast. And I don't know where you play him. He rushes off the edge. He rushes up the middle. He has the decent pass rush moveset, but I don't think he's a full-time edge. So I don't know exactly where he fits. He's another guy, but I think he can play off-ball edge. I kind of have him comped to Cervancier Dennis. It's kind of that hybrid linebacker type. He's interesting to me. Also, yeah, shout out to Brian. He's posted about Josh Pitzenberger before, and I talked about Josh Pitzenberger on the running back show, and I didn't know anybody knew who Josh Pitzenberger was. He's awesome. Love that guy from Yale. Just a couple other names. Jaden Duggar out of Louisiana is a guy that I like. Lander Barton out of Utah.
Forgot about him.
And then the only other guy that I want to name, because I think I've heard him talked about in the draft circles, and I'm excited to evaluate him, is Arian Carter. As far as my production model goes, he's pretty low on there. Xavier Sori is actually my lowest graded person on the production model right now, but that's only analytics. So I haven't looked at his tape yet, but there's a few guys that, I think could sneak into the draft or be preferred free agents kind of down towards that bottom. But those are, the linebacker class I think is pretty top heavy, and you're going to get a lot of them taken in the top 50, top 60.
Right. And what Draft Professor is striving to do is to cover as many of the players that are drafted in rounds 1 through 5 as possible. Right. So we can't claim to cover everybody in the draft, but if we shoot for rounds 1 through 5, that'll spill into round 6 and 7, because like Xavier Sori would be a great example. Some people may have him round 5, some people may have him round 7, but I think we're confident that he gets drafted at some point. So,
Yep.
Mike, thank you for stopping by here. So we do have to close the podcast down. Steve, do you want to let everybody know about your talk tape and turbines and your spaces and all the other great things that you do?
Yep. So Jim just did it all for me. Head right down there at Steve_NFL. That's the X, Twitter, whatever flavor of the month you want to call it, as well as the YouTube channel. There is the weekend show is much more broad NFL, because I won't let it become a depressing space all about the Jets. Over on YouTube, Talk Tape and Turbines, all the draft content. Stick with me, because my final 150 comes out next week. It will not be behind a paywall, so enjoy. And I get a lot of contributions and help from my partner here on the top right corner of my screen, Cha, as well as some of the other great draft professors, and very excited to be in this home stretch and, sort of licking my chops to get further along into 2027. But it starts with following right there. Cha.
Yep. Same thing. Find me on X. My handle's right there. Also, I don't put it in the thing, but footballwithchaw.com on YouTube, and also the blog. I haven't really been I got a new job, actual job that pays me money. No offense, Jim. But that job has taken my time away from doing this draft thing, of which I love so much. So I haven't posted any articles on the site for a while, but that does exist and will be starting to ramp up. I'm finalizing my model here. I don't know how much to weigh RAS. So that's what I'm going to do next for my model. Figure that out. But you can find me there. Obviously, Draft Professors every Thursday until the draft.
Yep. And good, Chaw, I hear you on the job thing. I actually start a new job tomorrow. I've been out of work since before Thanksgiving. So I started.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
That's right. You and I were on the phone when the offer came through.
Yeah. That's not
awesome.
even the job I took. This isn't even that job. But yeah. So I ended up having 2 offers. But
That's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah. So Draft Professor is here every day. We're here at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern. This is the early show. EJ is coming on in an hour with Christian, and they are going to cover running back scheme fits, followed by a combine review, because apparently the running back part, from what EJ said, isn't going to take very long. In addition to that, we do a group mock every Friday night. So Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Dale from Bengals and Brews and Newt Weston from Wednesday Night Draft Professors will be podcasting. You'll hear their thoughts on every player drafted in rounds 1 through 3 during the mock tomorrow night. And then we're also planning Epic Mock 26. That is filling up fast. I'm finding, I found more Seahawks people. Who knew? So really cool, because, there's certain fan bases, because most of us are Eastern time zone. Taylor is 2 time zones to the left of me. But there's very few draft professors that are to the left of us. There's a few, but not many. So it's tough to find the Los Angeles teams, the Seattle teams, just those teams. It's difficult to find podcasts because they're still at work. Like it's only 5 p.m. Pacific time right now, right? But anyways, so Epic Mock 26, April 9th, 10th, and 11th. It will be a full 7-round mock with trades, and it's a mock draft of podcasters. You will see Steve manning the Jets War Room, and he is putting together an all-star cast of Jets podcasters to come into his War Room, right? We have an all-star cast of Buffalo Bills podcasters, which include Jerry Ostrowski, and he is bringing in some very popular Bills personalities into his podcast to build that War Room. So you're going to see some of your favorite draft personalities drafting for their teams against the other podcasters. You don't want to miss it. Mark it down in your calendars, April 9th, 10th, and 11th. Get your popcorn ready. It's going to be a lot of fun. For Taylor, Steve, myself, for the 85 podcasters at the Draft Professor, thank you so much for watching. Enjoy your night, and we will see you on a podcast again in 1 hour.